G'day folks, and welcome to this quick report of the learning scenario 2 from Race for Bastogne. This scenario is titled No Neuville. Now I did do a full playthrough, it runs for over 2 hours, but it's quite long and the audio quality really deteriorates towards the end, so I thought I'd do a quick report on what happened. Now, it takes place in this little area northeast of Bastogne. This is the video from that full report, but I've sped it up about 15 times speed. Just having a look over the terrain here, going over the turn schedule. It runs for 24 hours, so there's I think it's about 4 or 5 turns in a day, then the night turn, and then 3 turns the following day. Each turn, each side places their division activation chits, their direct activation chits, and they can pick one of their 2 formations. And the Germans start off with this green Kampf group, while the Allies have picked their 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, because their plan at the start is to move this 506 right up to Noville. To win the scenario, the Germans need to capture both Noville and Foy down in the south. For the Americans to win, they need to defend both villages. Anything in between, such as if the Germans capture just Neuville, is a draw. So, the Americans want to push forward as far as they can towards Neuville and try and defend it and hold Neuville. They're setting sort of that village as their priority. Now the Germans get the first activation, and you can see them here bringing their reinforcements onto the board. They're stopping just outside the fire range of those Shermans in Neuville, and their initial plan is to hit Neuville with their armoured units and send some of the infantry around the woods to kind of the southeast. The American 506th begin to rush up. There's also the 28th Infantry Division in the light green based around Noville. This is part of Combat Command B. They have a Sherman, a Greyhound, some armoured rearguard, and an engineer unit, which is currently based in Foy. So 506 move up. They put up one company on the left flank, and the remainder sort of begin to push towards Neuville and in that wooded area to the right. The Germans respond by moving, I think they move most of their infantry through the wooded area to the right there, to the east, southeast of Neuville, with a reconnaissance armoured unit just to help them out, which actually did a lot of damage in the long run. In response, the Allies are using their airborne indirect HE artillery off map in their artillery park to try and blind the heavy German armoured units to really slow them down. You can see these light barrage markers being placed throughout each of the turns, basically blinding those Germans and not letting them get these hits on Neuville. All the while this is happening, the infantry out in the east is slowly pushing up. Now, another story of the scenario is the command point. So the 28th Infantry Division and the 506 101st Airborne had a lot of command throughout this. They had a surplus of command, and they were really exceeding their command availability, their command pool. So they're basically burning through command points as much as they can. The 28th Infantry Division in particular have only sort of 3 or 4 units on the board, so they're using these command points very freely. The Germans, on the other hand, were always limited and always low on command throughout the scenario. So they were much more careful with how they were spending their command points. You can see these light barrage markers and the armoured unit just trying to move forward to get out of that barrage. And every time they're moving forward, of course, they're suffering potential opportunity fire from those Allied armoured units. Now, by this stage, the Greyhound has moved to the southeast of Neuville and is protecting the infantry in that wooded area. It does a really good job for a few hours, spoiler alert. It doesn't last too long. And again, more light barrage markers in the north, blocking basically the line of sight of that big, powerful German armoured unit. There's a slow push by the German infantry through this wooded area. It does take them time to move through, but you can see they're kind of threatening Foy from the east while their armour hits at Neuville. They do very, very, very slowly kind of pile up cohesion hits on the engineers and on that Greyhound. throughout much of this, they struggle really to block the line of sight of those 28th Infantry Division armoured units, which basically enables the Greyhound and the Sherman and that tank rearguard to kind of fire quite freely, opportunity fire. Now the tank rearguard has a low troop quality rating, so they don't get many opportunity fire successes, but the Sherman certainly do and the Greyhounds do out in the east there, which kind of puts a halt to that German push in the east. And this is Kampfgruppe von Bohm. I should explain. The green units are part of that initial Kampfgruppe. Now the Germans don't do a great deal in this first day. Von Bohm is relatively small. They push on Neuville and Foy. They are really just trying to poke a few holes. You can see around this stage that Greyhound was eliminated by a very lucky shot from the Germans. And again, constantly struggling with command while the Allies are spending their command freely. We've moved up one of the 5 or 6 companies onto the left flank of Neuville. This is in a wooded area, so they've got -2 defense bonus, -1 for their innate armor bonus, so -3 when they sit in that area. And that those 5 or 6 companies out in the east are also in good defensive terrain, so they're getting again -3 cumulative defensive modifiers for being out there. The engineers are in open terrain, and just keep an eye on them. They're under a cohesion marker at the moment. He's in just north of Colonel Sink on the east. They are targeted a lot by the Germans out in the east, but do a great job of surviving. Keep an eye on what happens to them throughout the scenario. So just putting the chits back in the cup again. In each turn, of course, the Germans can pick one of these chits, as I mentioned earlier. The Americans too can choose between CCB and the 506. Once the 506 get into position, they draw more heavily on CCB. So during the night turn, more companies from the 506 arrive, and they push mainly towards Noville. This is going to be under serious threat with the strong Kampfgruppe Chacon, sort of the red-banded German units arriving from the northeast. So they try to move as far as they can, as rapid as they can. There's a few forced marches taking place to get them up into a good defensive position before the German armoured units arrive. Out in the east, there's this infantry exchange between the 506th and Kampfgruppe von Bohm. I think they're motorised or mechanised infantry in that wooded terrain. The engineers, you can see them here just recovering those cohesion hits, absorbing a lot of blows out in the open, and keeping in mind that these engineers, I think, have a +1 armour modifier, which is bad. Makes them a very vulnerable target. Now things start to get interesting here when German Kampfgruppe Chacon begins to arrive. Now they have to be very careful. It's a night turn, so there's limited visibility, but as soon as they get within the firing range and line of sight of these allied units, there is that chance for opportunity fire. They now have their artillery up and working. You can see the barrage marker on Neuville, and they try to blind those units as much as they can. Not so much, well, two things, both for opportunity fire prevention, but also to enable them to move up close during their divisional activation. You can see them moving. They've got both armoured units and AT guns, flak guns, which they're kind of spreading out. It is slow to get these AT guns to move. They basically end up prolonging. You'll see this in a moment. The 506 start to send some infantry into Neuville to help. You can see them again moving up infantry on the left flank. I forgot to mention they lost their HQ mortar unit late on that first day. By this stage, I think we're at the start of the second day. There are fog effects, which is -1 fire value, +1 movement cost to all spaces. I did forget this a lot of the time. I just kept forgetting that it was basically fog effects. But with all this German armour and guns, and the infantry begin to surge on Neuville, you can see them moving in now. Once they they took out the tank rearguard just to the northwest of Noville, and they begin to attack the village itself, focusing firstly, I think, on the Shermans in Neuville, suppressing them, building up cohesion hits, and just in a moment sending that unit to the graveyard. It's then left up to the 506 to defend, but they're swamped by mainly some pretty strong German infantry at this stage, and once again they gradually build up the cohesion hits. Now by this stage, much of the 506 is kind of out in the open, the engineers are out in the open, and in just a moment you'll see the Allies make the decision to fall back on Foy. So they give up on holding Neuville and begin to rush back as fast as they can to defensive positions. Now they're also under pressure. You can see German infantry moving around the left of Neuville. They're kind of briefly stopped by a company of the 506, but then once all these Germans begin firing on Neuville, here you can see the retreat starting to take place. The mortar really retreating back as fast as they can. You'll see infantry trying to disengage. Actually, on the far right here, some of these companies try and hold the German infantry at bay. They move back into Foy. A few of them suffer cohesion hits from opportunity fire on the way back. Fog, however, limits visibility to 2 hexes, so they are somewhat saved in their retreat. You can see the engineers still alive here. They hold a blocking position on the road. I mentioned earlier they did a great job in just surviving in this open terrain, and once again they move back into the open. It costs an additional movement point to move through these clear hexes, so it's slow going, and they just occupy that road almost as a speed bump in the way of the German advance. And here they go. Now the Germans still fighting to eliminate that last company in Neuville. You can see the cohesion hits building up, and then I think they scored. May have been an elimination hit, which cleared it off, and now they begin driving towards Foy. By this stage, there's only I think 2 turns left, in the scenario. So it's a rush. You can see the Americans starting to build up their improved positions in Foy and just to the southwest. Some men at work doing the same thing. You can see the engineers suppressed on the road as this roadblock, whilst 3 companies out in the east continue to hold back that infantry in the woods. German armour does a pretty good job in kind of navigating around those engineers. You can see those engineers gradually building up the step losses, more improved positions in Foy underway. The mortar and the off-map artillery are doing as much as they can to place barrage markers and blind and slow down the Germans as they advance. A lot of the guns in the rear around Neuville have been loading, unloading, and really struggled to keep up with the fighting. And by this point, the Germans have kind of moved around those engineers who are still blocking the road and have begun their attacks on Foy. And pay attention to these. At the present, I think there's just 2 companies in Foy, one in an improved position, the other one trying to build improved positions. This is then the last scenario of, the last turn of this scenario. So at this stage, the scenario will continue through until all chips are removed from the cup, so that the Germans have this turn and all their activations available to eliminate all those 506 companies in Foy. You can see that Allied artillery and mortars hard at work trying to blind them, limit their visibility. The Germans are firing away rapidly. I think they eliminate 1 company. At this stage, from memory, there was just 1 company left in Foy. And then the Allies make the decision to withdraw their infantry from the woods in the east and build up their defences. I think first of all the mortar moves in. That's the mortar moving in. And then they try to withdraw. They're suffering opportunity fire along the way. but those barrage markers have helped to reduce that. One of them fails their forced march, so you can see they're just stopping short southeast, but another one does make it in. So we had 3 506 companies in Foy. This was too much for the Germans to deal with. They couldn't eliminate all of them. You can see them firing away, trying to inflict hits, but just, too many parachute companies in Foy, too many barrage markers. A few of those Germans had suffered cohesion hits, or had rushed down in columns, they had reduced firepower, and they were just unable by the end of the scenario to clear the Americans out of Foy. So by the end of the scenario, you can see those engineers were eventually destroyed. 28th Infantry Division was all but wiped out. CCB was gone. They were no longer on the scenario map. But 506 did a stellar job of holding back that final German attack on Foy to fight out a draw. So it wasn't a German victory because they captured Neuville. It wasn't an American victory because they lost Neuville. But Foy was held, which makes this a draw.